Well, quiet everyone, and welcome to number 7 in the Hoodwink series. So we're rocking right along. Only one more left, and we'll be completed with showing you why the greenwashed mountains are hoodwinked. I said that right. And so it's based on the Hoodwinked series written by a consortia of groups, including Indigenous Environmental Network, one of my favorites, for reasons I've been saying at every one of these, Indigenous Environmental Network. And in this booklet, they will talk about all of the different false solutions that we've been talking about in our series. Doing a short synopsis of each one of those, but with a good bibliography that you can click onto and read in depth if you want to do a deep dive into each of these solutions, false solutions, that are being promoted here in Vermont and in other states, that our speakers that we've brought in have all been talking to you about. And on the back is a URL that you can go to and get a free one, or as many as you want of these for free. Hand them out to your friends. Get together on Sunday nights like we do in Vail and talk about it and learn about it. And then gather up the neighbors and demand low carbon solutions for our state. And this is what we're doing here in Vermont. And so tonight we're going to talk about hydrogen, blue-green hydrogen. Okay. So what is that? Well, you're going to find out. And so we've talked about a lot of things in this series, a lot of different solutions, so-called, that are being proposed for Vermont. We've learned about that, and tonight we'll learn about hydrogen. We've heard a lot about that lately. The Biden administration is pumping billions of dollars into this so-called solution for our climate. But why is it a false solution? Well, we'll find out when we listen to Cathy Kristofferson, who is co-founder of Pipeline Awareness Network for the Northeast. And she's promoting carbon-free or combustion-free solutions, and that's her work. And she's going to educate us about hydrogen and the various types of hydrogen that we keep hearing about, including green hydrogen, and why that's a false solution, but it's being heavily promoted in Vermont. And so we need to pay attention to this. And so I give you Cathy Kristofferson, Looney.
All right, thank you. Yes, I'm Cathy Kristofferson, Pipeline Awareness Network for the Northeast. We are an organization that founded in 2015 after fighting large interstate fracked pipelines. And hydrogen goes right into that fight because hydrogen is one of the gases that they're proposing to decarbonize our energy future. And as Earl said, yes, green, blue, brown, pink, aqua, yellow, white, there's all kinds. Are they clean? Only one is green. Is it clean or is it neither? And as Earl said, the hype has really been hyped up lately with the Biden administration for the last couple of years, pouring billions of dollars into the solution that Joe Manchin calls all of the above energy. And if Joe Manchin likes it, right away Cathy doesn't like it. So, but for me, I come from Massachusetts. The plan, as we call it, mainly is in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And mostly when we were fighting the NED, the Kinder Morgan pipeline, we wondered why the heck it didn't come through Vermont. But you don't have any interstate pipelines here, so that's probably why they didn't start. It came along Massachusetts, went up into New Hampshire, back down to Massachusetts. Yes, who want to get to the next one? That's you, sorry. You took control away from me, so there we go. Yep. What is hydrogen, right? Besides that first element up on the periodic table, it's the most common element in the universe. It's what the stars are made up of, and it is the lightest element, which means it moves around easily, which means it leaks easily. It reacts with almost every other element, right? H2O, CH4, sort of everything you have. And if you want to use it for energy, you have to make it. The United States makes a lot, and we make it from gray, which is from fossil. Next. So what is hydrogen used for now? The majority of it is, at least more than half, is used in petroleum refineries, and that is all the gray made from fossil gas. Next. We use an inordinate amount in fertilizer. That's how we grow our food. It's one of our big problems. What are we going to do? Next. Hydrogenated oils. Everyone knows about that, right? The cooking oils. Next. And famously, it is rocket fuel in NASA. Okay. All right, so there are 4 ways the energy companies are talking about using it. Next. So what could it be used for? Next. First would be storage. Famously, right? Solar and wind are intermittent. What the heck are we going to do when they're not working? We can convert it into that. We can use it for shipping, and we could use it for very long distance trucking, where the weight and size of batteries might be an impediment, and we can use it in industry. Iron smelting requires a very high heat, they said, and so must have it for that, must have it for cement, must have it for aluminum, those sorts of industrial applications. Next. But maybe, since we've been giving these presentations, we began sometime in 2021, I think, right? All of shipping had to be hydrogen. That's where we had to replace the diesel with hydrogen. And already this is a very nice hydrofoil electric ferry. And a company called Boston Metal has found a low temperature way to make steel. And next. And this, I love this slide because this is a mining truck, totally battery driven. I can see Earl shaking his head because it's mining. It's only there because of the size, right? If they can run that, clearly they have a lot of room for the batteries and everything. It has a really very good regenerative braking as well that recharges the battery while they're driving downhill. Has some sort of cool things like that. And this is Form Energy in Somerville, and they make iron air batteries. So all the concern of there's not enough lithium in the world, this is another way to do it. Next, please. This is a very busy slide from NYSERDA. They are the New York folks. This was their slide introducing the hydrogen hub. But if you just click one more, the basic information on the slide to see is that if you want it, you have to produce it. You have to power the production to make it, and then you can use it. Next. And these are the ways that the world makes hydrogen. And the slide probably isn't that readable, but there's the pink, blue, gray, the brown, the colors I mentioned before. In here is how they make it. It's either electrolysis or steam methane reforming, which is reforming the methane. Oh, what do you do to late arrivers? You get him a chair? Okay. Welcome, welcome. So we're, as you can see, the majority of the ways, the source is methane, coal, fossil fuels. These are the ways that we are making our hydrogen. So really, there's only the green, the top corner, that we would consider very clean. I guess we would say New York, they're promoting the pink. It's made the same as green, only it comes from nuclear power, so it would be your thoughts on nuclear power, which I think Vermont Yankee might tell me you don't like it too much. So pretty dirty as well. Next, please. So this is just a nice bar graph on how energy, how the hydrogen is produced from the International Energy Agency. You can see that the majority of it, natural gas, CCUS is here, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Okay, so this is without it, and then coal, and then a byproduct of making ammonia, chloride, or something. You see that way up the top where the bars are too small to even tell, that's how much we make with electricity, 0.1%. So if we want to use hydrogen for what the gas companies want us to use it for, right, heating our homes, fueling our cars, making our electricity, there's an awful lot of dirty hydrogen that needs to be cleaned up first. And it may have to only go to those applications that we don't have any other solution for. Next. So this slide will just show you the basic way of how gray, blue, and green, which are the three common kinds, are made. So gray is made with fossil gas as both the feedstock and the energy used to run the process. So the beautiful thing for the gas industry is that if you have gray hydrogen, you use even more fracked gas than if you just use fracked gas. So in comes this, in comes some water as steam for the steam methane reforming. Out comes your hydrogen, and there goes your carbon dioxide out the stack. Next is blue, same thing, only magically all the carbon is stored underground into perpetuity, which none of us will live long enough to tell them whether that's real or not. Next is green, so renewable electricity runs the process, water comes in, right, and you split off your H, your O's, and two get together, and all that comes out is oxygen. Next. But how green is blue? So the industry is really pushing the blue because it uses fossil gas as the feedstock and the energy to produce it. But they say, don't worry, we can capture all the carbon and store it forever. So if you could hit once. Chris? There you go. So this is the emissions of natural gas. One more. This is how much emissions with gray hydrogen. One more. And you would see this is blue hydrogen. So you can see that both blue and gray are more than natural gas itself, and even more than coal. So is hydrogen really much of a solution? Not really. Go ahead. And so the two common ways that people would think about using hydrogen is combustion, like any other gas. So you could put it in your cook stove. You could put it in your boiler in the basement. And amazingly, Toyota is making a hydrogen internal combustion engine car. So they're burning it. So don't feel like you're sitting on that dirigible or anything. Next is you can use it in a fuel cell, which is sort of like a battery. And that is the more common way that cars are being promoted. Like this, you have to go to a fueling station, the same as a gasoline fueling station. You can have a fuel cell out the back to run your furnace or something. And pretty commonly, they're being promoted for the big 18-wheelers. Next. So this is a wicked busy slide, but it is a table that Professor Howarth gave in his testimony to the Vermont Senate over the clean heat standard and the reasons. He used the same table when he testified before the Massachusetts DPU as well. And I'll just have you click them on down. So the reasons he says why they're not good in gas pipelines is they're very leaky. They leak much more than methane, so the gas leaks in the leaky pipelines. But anywhere there's a junction, so interstate pipelines leak as well. Also, they have to be vented at valves and compressor stations. So anywhere there's a junction, there's a leak. And hydrogen is way smaller, so much more leaky. Next is it is bad for the pipes. In the current setup now, they believe they can put 20% mixed in with the fracked gas and just send it along. They don't actually mix, but they do all jam in the same pipe. But the problem is that they embrittle steel. And so steel pipes, cast iron pipes, They just kind of crack the pipes. And since it's a leaky material, do you really want it in your pipes? I don't think so. It's incompatible mainly with furnaces, cook stoves, and that sort of thing. It can only blend a small amount. On its own, it doesn't have color or smell, kind of similar to natural gas, but they don't seem to have found something like mercaptan, like that's what's in gas. I think they put it in propane too, right, to make it smell, so people can know that they're about to blow up. But you can't do that. California had a study that will be on a next slide, and they found that only 5% was okay. And the next is the low energy density of it. So if you blend in 20%, because it is so low, you only get a 7% savings because 1/3. So you're going through if only 5% is okay, you're going through a whole lot of nothing to get 1% reduction. Most of the world needs at least 85. If you're a net zero by 2050 place, the last 15% is going to magically be in wetlands, the ocean, and trees. You have to reduce 85. That's not the best way. It is very expensive now, and you have to put more of it. So it isn't a solution that can exist without being subsidized. Next. The biggest problem we have at the moment is that in order to make green hydrogen through electrolysis is you need clean electricity. We don't have enough clean electricity as it is. ISO New England, right, I think a little bit more than half comes from gas power plants. Those need to be fixed first, because then when you're running your air source heat pump or you're powering your Chevy Bolt, you want to be powering it with clean electricity. First, we have to clean up the grid. Next. And it's pretty inefficient, and it slows our transition away from fossil fuels. Okay. So this was a study that I mentioned from California. PUC had Riverside, UC Riverside do a study, and they ticked off the first 4 bullets of Mr. Howarth's table. It's leaky, it's bad for the pipes, incompatible with appliances, and only 5% is safe. Next. This is a nice, don't worry about reading any of it, just look at the color of the bars. So it's inefficient versus direct electrification. So for light duty, driving your car around, heating your home, and powering your electricity, this is how much you would need with electrification. This is how much you need with hydrogen. Next. And this is a nice slide from the UK where they are trying out pilots for using green hydrogen to heat homes. And if you use a heat pump, you sort of need 26 gigawatts of electricity. Come along, you bring in 2/3 of the heat from the environment, and you'll get 70 gigawatts. Don't worry about the numbers too much, but if you want to use hydrogen, you need 150 gigawatts of electricity. Then you convert it over to your hydrogen. You compress it, you transmit it in a pipeline. You get this much. You boil it. It's got some inefficiency, 10%, and you get that. So you have 1 turbine or 6 turbines. And I don't know how many turbines Vermont has, but I know that Massachusetts has a requirement to have 5.6 gigawatts in place, procured by 2027, and we are on track for 800 megawatts. So we're pretty behind, and that would be clean electricity going into the same grid that you guys use. So it's just all ISO New England. Next. This, I have to find my notes for this slide because I don't want to quote it wrong, but this is one of my favorite slides. Yes. This picture came with an article in the Nature that said, study confirms what common sense has made clear for years. Hydrogen fuel cells cannot catch up to battery electric vehicles. So here we have our power source, our favorite sun. Capture the power in solar panels, charge up your Chevy Bolt, as I do, and drive away. Or you have your power source, you capture it, You burn a whole bunch of it to make some hydrogen. You put it in a big tank. You wait for the tanker truck to come, fills up, comes on over to the charging station, stores it in the tank there. Then someone comes along and you store it on board. And then when you want to drive, you pump it into here it is stored under your driver's seat. You pump it into your battery, and then you use the electricity it makes to drive. So it's sort of a nice picture of the inefficiency of using hydrogen. The title was nice too. This is hydrogen for electric generation. This is an article out of the LA Times where they have committed to decarbonizing their electric generation, their gas plants. So they are going to take clean, green, beautiful offshore wind electricity, pump it into, make hydrogen with it, blend that hydrogen into the gas turbines where you can do 30%, and get a 30% round trip. So basically the energy loss is 70%. So you have if I was a graphic artist, which I obviously am not, you would have your 100% here. You would dump your bucket out to 70% of your bucket, and then you get some electricity created with a mixture of fossil and clean. And then you have great clean electricity. You wasted 70% of it, and the output is mostly dirty. So, but I'm sure that gas plant has the contract to provide electricity. And they're going to do whatever they can to clean it up. And it probably has like a 20-year contract or something. So they can't just replace it with the electricity that's coming off the turbines. Next. So I thought I would talk a little bit about what is going on at the federal level and here in Vermont at the state level. Yep. Everyone probably saw President Biden put out his first Earth shot, like President Kennedy's moon shots, and he did it with hydrogen. So the whole idea is 111. For $1, you can get 1 kilogram, and at that price level, needs to be done within 1 decade. And I think he did that in 2021. Go ahead. Then the bipartisan infrastructure bill came along in the end of 2021, and the Department of Energy established what was in that bill, which is $9.5 billion for clean hydrogen initiatives. So there are $8 billion for regional hubs to make jobs and energy in the industrial sector, $1 billion for clean hydrogen, the electrolysis program to make better versions of the electrolyzers, and half a billion for clean hydrogen manufacturing. The main thing I want you to notice is now that we call it clean hydrogen. It isn't got a color anymore, way too confusing for people. We'll just call it clean. Next slide. And then meanwhile, here in Vermont, the Vermont Green Hydrogen Partnership came along. UVM, Vermont Gas, and Global Foundries partnered to figure out a way to displace some of the fossil gas that they're using in their Essex Junction facility. Then later in the year, the Vermont Clean and Resilient Energy Consortium joined in with them, and they were talking about blending 2 to 5% green hydrogen into a couple of their boilers. So as I mentioned about the efficiency, it's a whole lot of work to reduce a very little bit of emissions. So the next big thing that came out of the Biden administration with the IRA is this thing called the 45V Clean Hydrogen Production Tax. And you don't really need to read all that. This is what everyone is aiming for. $3 tax credit on hydrogen. If you could go to the next. The key, though, is what is the Revenue Department? What is the IRS going to call clean? Because it's going to be made with fossil. Because you don't have to define clean if it's green hydrogen made with clean energy. It's what percent carbon will be acceptable. And so that slide, the previous slide, showed the breakdown of the tax credits you could get. Everybody wants the biggest tax credit, so it's going to depend. And what a lot of the environmental groups are trying to demand is that the clean hydrogen has to have these three pillars, which is additionality, which means that the energy you use, you've created the plant to create the energy. You haven't taken it from cleaning the grid or doing some other good use. Any facility that already exists shouldn't be counted. It should be newly made. And it has to be new, right? And you can't be getting non-local credits. I think a lot of the green hydrogen that green energy that the utilities are providing might be wind out of Texas, right? Some RECs out of somewhere else, not necessarily something nice and local and deliverable there. And it has to be time matching. So we know that it costs a lot for electricity during peak times. So you can't be stealing it from them. You can't be taking it from the nighttime and using it in the day. You have to make it when you're going to use it. You need to make it local, and you have to make it fresh. So I'm not sure that's the right word for energy, but it's okay. At the beginning of this year, Vermont joined in with the Northeast Hydrogen Hub that was started in New York with Governor Hochul. So Vermont joined in with New York, Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts. Some reason we swapped New Hampshire for New Jersey, but okay, and Rhode Island. So that is the Northeast Clean Hub. We don't have a lot of information about it. They were going for the $8 billion program, waiting for the announcement. You guys probably know it has been announced, but we'll wait for a couple slides. Go ahead. And then S5 came around, the Affordable Heat Act. And within the final bill, an eligible measure is the supply of green hydrogen. It doesn't say how it qualifies, just that it could qualify. And so the people promoting the hubs, the people looking at making hydrogen, they're all waiting on this production tax credit and the definition of clean. It was expected in August. So everyone's waiting on that, waiting on the hubs. And at the beginning of this month, Secretary Granholm announced that it would be delayed to the end of the year. Apparently, they are expecting to be sued if it isn't fossil friendly enough. We'll have to see what comes out at the end of the year. But that's something that the production has been waiting on, those very, very lucrative tens of billions of dollars of tax credit. Next, please. And so finally, at the end, 10 days later, after the bad news, she announced what is the good news for the 7 hubs. And this is sort of the slide they had, but I added the rings to it just to give you an idea of the colors of the hydrogen they're going to use to make clean hydrogen. So the Mid-Atlantic and the Appalachian, both are in Pennsylvania. This one we will just call the Joe Manchin hub. It's completely fossil gas. They're using pink and green in the closest one to us, New Jersey-ish, Pennsylvania. There's pink and green and blue, another totally blue. So blue with green, this green would be onshore wind, because Texas has a lot of onshore wind. And the other two, California is offshore wind, and this one is some kind of biomassy thing. We'll have to see. One of the interesting things about the hubs is that there's no details on it. First, they were hiding the details until they were chosen, and now that they've been chosen, they're still all hiding the details. There's just some general area as defined by the dots. Then there are only proposed facilities, and the general region and the states involved. So all that information, this was just announced a couple weeks ago, but we're still waiting. Yeah, oh, that's right, it was done on Friday the 13th, which I thought was a bit ominous. We'll have to see what comes of it. Next, please. And then this was our hub here, right, which was going to be pink and green. Nobody is suggesting that of the 77 hubs that originally were put it forward, and then 33 were chosen to send in final. I knew I could get out of the camera if I moved, but she's going to move the camera. Were submitted an application and only 7 won. Nobody thinks any of them have stopped. They're just not going to get the $8 billion because they're all trying to get the production tax credit, which is hundreds of billions of dollars in incentives to create clean hydrogen. And we always seem to have Hydro-Quebec hanging over us. They came down to Massachusetts and presented at the Robb Associates, who does talks monthly or so. And when I was there, they were talking about, oh, we'll be trucking in the green hydrogen we make with our hydroelectric dams, clean energy, because we already have the routes, no big deal. I haven't seen too much from them. I think they pulled out of a pilot. Do you mind? Next then. This is Liebrich's hydrogen ladder, and this is version 5. But I just show it because these are the unavoidable, so the fertilizer, the hydrogenation, the hydrofracking, cracking rather, the industrial things. And it used to be all red up there, and the colors came down. And now electric batteries is just growing up so much now that his G, which is completely uncompetitive, is 2 rows. And there you see domestic heating, regular trucks, trains, low, 2- and 3-wheelers, cars, power generation, the things that our gas companies are suggesting, the ferries that I showed, some light. Battery electric is really managed to pull in, he even has it up there in the steel. Oops, hit this, sorry. It's just been an evolution over his 5 versions in just 2 years. If you can, I think vintage and muscle cars are pretty funny, but I guess they always have to combust in those ICE motors. Next. And this is just from this week. Professor Howarth was lamenting with somebody. This is on Blue Sky, which I had to join just to follow Professor Howarth. But there was a big study done in the UK. It clearly explained that hydrogen is a stupid idea, but the government is still firmly behind it. And he's saying that here in the US, we're suffering the same thing. I'm not sure if he used Trump on purpose or not, but politics is trumping thoughtful analysis. And it's pretty sad. And the politics are still being driven by the oil and gas industry. And so that's sort of what we're fighting. And I think for me, the question is, can we use hydrogen for heating? Can we use hydrogen to run our cars? Can we use hydrogen to create electricity? Sure. But the question is, should we? Right? Is that what we should be doing with that power source that should be saved for what we can't decarbonize and what we don't have a better solution for, and keep electrification for the easy to electrify things like air source heat pumps, Chevy Bolts, maybe not the Musk cars, but the other cars. There's a whole lot of cars coming around, right? So that's sort of what we think. The gas industry is really working hard to distract, delay, and derail the electrification that we're trying to do. So for me, business as usual of ever expanding pipelines needs to stop. And that's sort of my message. Thank you.